My roommate begged me to say she was home all Tuesday. At 9 a.m. Wednesday, detectives arrived with an arrest warrant. Vanessa grabbed my arm Monday night while I was studying for my nursing exam. Her nails dug into my skin hard enough to leave marks. My name is Claire, and I'd been sharing an apartment with Vanessa Kemp for 8 months. She worked as a paralegal at a downtown law firm and usually stayed out late at happy hours with coworkers. But tonight she stood in my bedroom doorway at 11:30, her makeup smeared and her hands shaking. "I need you to do something for me. It's really important." Her voice cracked on the last word. I closed my textbook and looked at her properly. Her designer blouse had a stain on the collar that looked like wine or maybe blood. Her hair was falling out of its neat bun. She'd been crying recently based on the redness around her eyes. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" She shook her head fast. "If anyone asks, I need you to say I was here all day tomorrow. Homesick. We watched movies together. I never left the apartment. Can you do that for me?" I felt my stomach tighten. "Why would anyone ask where you were?" Vanessa's face went pale. "They might not. But if they do, please just say I was here. I'm begging you, Claire. Please." I should have pressed harder for answers. I should have demanded to know what she'd done or what trouble she was in. Instead, I looked at her terrified face and said yes because we'd become friends over the past months. She'd helped me study for exams by making flashcards. She'd covered my share of rent when I was short one month. She'd listened to me cry about my ex-boyfriend and brought me ice cream. The version of friendship we'd built made me want to protect her even when my instincts screamed that something was very wrong. "Okay, I'll say you were homesick if anyone asks." Relief flooded her features. "Thank you. Thank you so much. I owe you everything." She hugged me quickly and retreated to her bedroom. I heard her lock click. I tried to go back to studying but couldn't focus. The request sat in my mind like a stone. Why would Vanessa need an alibi? What had happened that required me to lie for her? I opened my laptop and checked local news sites but found nothing that seemed relevant. I considered texting mutual friends to ask if they'd seen her that day but decided against it. If she needed discretion, spreading questions around would defeat the purpose. The next morning, Vanessa was already gone when I woke up. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter. "Thank you for being such a good friend. I won't forget this." The handwriting was shaky and uneven. I put the note in my pocket and went to my clinical rotation at Mercy Hospital. I spent the day taking vitals and helping nurses with patient care. Around 3 in the afternoon, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Detective Raymond Ortiz with Metro Police. I need to ask you some questions about your roommate Vanessa Kemp. Please call me at this number." My heart started pounding. I excused myself to the bathroom and stared at the message. Whatever Vanessa had done was serious enough to involve detectives. I thought about calling the number immediately, but decided to wait until I got home and could think clearly. The rest of my shift dragged on forever. Every patient interaction felt like I was moving through water. My supervising nurse asked if I was feeling okay. I lied and said I was just tired from studying. When I finally got home around 7, Vanessa still wasn't there. I called the detective's number. Detective Ortiz answered on the second ring. His voice was professional and measured. "Miss Holloway, thank you for calling back. I'm investigating an incident that occurred yesterday, and I need to verify some information about Vanessa Kemp's whereabouts. Are you her current roommate?" I gripped my phone tighter. "Yes, we share an apartment," he continued. "Can you confirm whether Miss Kemp was home yesterday, specifically between the hours of 1 and 6 in the afternoon?" This was the moment. I could tell the truth that I'd been at my clinical rotation all day and had no idea where Vanessa was. Or I could lie and give her the alibi she'd begged for. I thought about her terrified face the night before, about how she'd helped me through difficult months, about friendship and loyalty. She was homesick yesterday. We watched movies together. She didn't leave the apartment. The lie came out smoothly, almost convincingly. Detective Ortiz paused. "You're certain about that timeline? You were with her the entire afternoon?" I doubled down. "Yes. She had a bad cold and stayed in bed most of the day. I brought her soup and we watched Netflix. She definitely didn't go anywhere." Another pause. "Thank you for that information, Miss Holloway. I may need to follow up with you later." After hanging up, I sat on the couch feeling sick. I'd just lied to a police detective, provided a false alibi for whatever Vanessa had done. The apartment felt too quiet and too empty. I tried calling Vanessa, but her phone went straight to voicemail. I left a message. "The police called me asking about yesterday. I told them what you wanted me to say, but I need to know what's going on. Call me back." She didn't call. At 9, I gave up waiting and went to bed but couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the conversation with Detective Ortiz, wondering what incident he was investigating. Around midnight, I heard the apartment door open. Vanessa came in quietly, moving through the dark living room toward her bedroom. I got up and intercepted her in the hallway. "The police called me today asking where you were yesterday afternoon. I gave you an alibi. Now you need to tell me what this is about." Vanessa's face was shadowed, but I could see tears reflecting in the dim light from the street outside. "I can't tell you. It's safer if you don't know. But thank you for covering for me." I know that was hard. I felt anger rising. "You asked me to lie to detectives. You don't get to keep secrets now. What did you do? She shook her head and pushed past me into her room. I'm sorry, I can't. Her door closed and locked again. I stood in the hallway feeling betrayed and used. Whatever Vanessa had done was serious enough to require police investigation and false alibis, and I'd made myself an accomplice without even knowing the crime. I went back to my room and couldn't sleep. At 3 a.m, I heard Vanessa moving around in her room, drawers opening and closing, the sound of something heavy being dragged across the floor. I got up quietly and pressed my ear against the shared wall. She was packing, preparing to leave. The realization hit me that Vanessa was running from something, and I'd helped her by lying to police. At 7, I heard the apartment door open and close. Vanessa was gone. I checked her room and found it mostly empty. She'd taken her clothes, her laptop, her important documents. The closet stood open and bare. She'd left behind furniture and kitchen items but taken everything personal. On her nightstand was an envelope with my name on it. Inside was $2,000 in cash and a note. This doesn't begin to cover what I owe you. Use it for next month's rent and whatever else you need. I'm so sorry I got you involved. Please don't try to find me. The cash felt dirty in my hands. Blood money or guilt money or both. I sat on Vanessa's stripped bed trying to process what was happening. My roommate had committed some crime, gotten me to provide a false alibi, and disappeared with $2,000 in hush money. I felt sick with guilt and fear about what I'd done. At 8:30, I heard heavy footsteps in the hallway outside our apartment, then loud knocking. Metro Police, we have a warrant for Vanessa Kemp. I opened the door to find 2 detectives standing there with badges displayed. One was Detective Ortiz from the phone call. The other was a woman with short gray hair who introduced herself as Detective Lucia Ramos. Behind them stood 2 uniformed officers. Detective Ortiz's face was hard when he recognized me. Miss Holloway, we have an arrest warrant for Vanessa Kemp. Is she here? I stepped back from the door. No, she left early this morning. I don't know where she went. Detective Ramos moved past me into the apartment. When was the last time you saw her? I thought about lying again but decided I'd done enough damage. Last night around midnight, she came home and went straight to her room. This morning I heard her leave around 7. The detectives exchanged looks. Detective Ortiz turned back to me. Miss Holloway, when we spoke yesterday you told me Vanessa was home with you all afternoon. Was that true? The moment of reckoning. I could continue lying and dig myself deeper, or I could tell the truth and face consequences. No. I was at my clinical rotation at Mercy Hospital from 7 in the morning until 6 at night. I have no idea where Vanessa was yesterday. She asked me to lie for her and I did because she's my friend. Detective Ramos stepped closer. So you provided a false alibi for someone under criminal investigation. Do you understand that's obstruction of justice? Fear flooded through me. I didn't know what she'd done. She wouldn't tell me. I just wanted to help her because she seemed so scared. Detective Ortiz's expression softened slightly. Miss Kemp is wanted in connection with a vehicular homicide. Yesterday afternoon around 2:30, a woman named Margaret Thornton was struck and killed by a hit-and-run driver on Riverside Avenue. Witnesses described a silver Nissan matching Miss Kemp's vehicle fleeing the scene. The victim was a 63-year-old grandmother who was crossing the street to pick up her granddaughter from school. The words hit me like physical blows. Vehicular homicide, hit and run, a grandmother killed while crossing the street. I'd provided an alibi for someone who'd killed another human being and driven away. Oh my God. My legs felt weak. I sat down hard on the couch. I didn't know. She didn't tell me. I swear I had no idea. Detective Ramos pulled out a notebook. Walk me through exactly what happened. When did she ask you for the alibi? I told them everything. Vanessa grabbing my arm Monday night, her stained blouse and terrified face, the request to say she'd been home, my agreement without asking questions, the phone call with Detective Ortiz where I'd lied, coming home to find her packing, the cash she'd left. The detectives took notes and asked follow-up questions. Detective Ortiz examined Vanessa's bedroom while Detective Ramos stayed with me in the living room. Miss Holloway, your clinical rotation can verify you were at the hospital yesterday afternoon. That actually helps your situation. You didn't witness Miss Kemp committing the crime. You just provided a false alibi after the fact based on her request. I felt a small measure of relief. Am I going to be arrested? Detective Ramos considered this. That depends on your cooperation. We need you to make a formal statement and testify if this goes to trial. Detective Ortiz returned from Vanessa's room holding a laptop bag. She left her work computer, probably too risky to take it with her. He looked at me. Did she say anything about where she might go? Family, friends, anywhere she might run to? I tried to think through my foggy panic. Her parents live in Arizona. She mentioned a sister in Colorado once. She has friends from law school, but I don't know their names or how to reach them. Detective Ramos wrote this down. What about her job? Did she mention anything about work recently? Any problems or stress? I remembered something. Last week, she came home angry about a case she was working on. Something about a senior partner taking credit for her research. She said the firm was toxic and she wanted to quit but needed the money. The detectives exchanged glances again. Detective Ortiz spoke. The firm where she works represents the Thornton family. Margaret Thornton's husband hired them 6 months ago for an estate planning matter. Vanessa Kemp was the paralegal assigned to the case. She had access to personal information about the family, including schedules and routines. The implications settled over me like ice water. This wasn't a random accident. Vanessa had known Margaret Thornton through work and had information about her movements. You think she hit her on purpose? Detective Ramos's face was grim. We're investigating all possibilities, but witness statements place Miss Kemp's vehicle accelerating toward Mrs. Thornton, not braking. The impact threw the victim 30 feet. The driver didn't stop or call for help. This doesn't look like an accident. I felt like I might vomit. Vanessa had deliberately killed someone, planned it using information from work, and I'd helped her try to escape justice by lying about her whereabouts. What happens now? Detective Ortiz closed his notebook. We've issued a warrant for Miss Kemp's arrest. We'll find her. In the meantime, you need to come to the station and give a formal statement. And Miss Holloway, don't leave town. You're a witness in a homicide investigation and potentially facing obstruction charges depending on how cooperative you are. They allowed me to change clothes and gather my things. I rode to the police station in the back of Detective Ramos's sedan, feeling like a criminal myself. At the station, I spent 3 hours giving my statement to a recording device while detectives asked detailed questions. They wanted to know everything about my relationship with Vanessa, our conversations, her behavior over the past weeks, any mention of Margaret Thornton or the Thornton family. I told them about Vanessa's growing stress at work, how she'd started drinking more heavily, how she'd mentioned feeling undervalued and disrespected, how she'd complained that the senior partners made millions while paralegals did all the actual work. I mentioned the stained blouse she'd been wearing Monday night and how it could have been blood. The detectives seized on this. You saw blood on her clothing? I corrected quickly. I saw a dark stain on her collar. I thought it was wine at the time, but it could have been blood. They asked me to describe the stain's location, size, and color as accurately as possible. After giving my statement, a different detective took me to a separate room where I waited alone for an hour. The walls were painted institutional beige and the clock on the wall ticked loudly. I felt trapped and terrified about what would happen next. Would they charge me with obstruction? Would I lose my nursing license before I even graduated? How could I have been so stupid as to lie to police for someone without knowing why? Detective Ramos finally returned with papers for me to sign. You're free to go for now, but you need to remain available for further questioning. Don't discuss this case with anyone except your attorney. And if Vanessa contacts you, notify us immediately. I took an Uber home because my hands were shaking too badly to drive. The apartment felt like a crime scene now. Vanessa's empty room, the cash she'd left, the evidence of her guilt everywhere I looked. I called my mom and told her everything. She was horrified and wanted me to come home immediately. I explained I couldn't leave town. She said she'd call a lawyer. That night, I couldn't eat or sleep. I kept seeing Margaret Thornton in my mind even though I'd never met her. A 63-year-old grandmother crossing the street to pick up her granddaughter. The impact throwing her 30 feet. Vanessa accelerating instead of braking. The deliberate nature of the killing. And my role in trying to protect her afterward. The local news ran the story the next morning. Police search for paralegal in fatal hit and run. They showed a photo of Vanessa from her law firm website, smiling and professional in a navy blazer. They showed photos of Margaret Thornton with her family, a kind-faced woman with white hair and a warm smile. They described the crime and mentioned that police were following leads. My phone started ringing with calls from classmates and friends who recognized my address in news reports. I didn't answer. My mom's lawyer, a criminal defense attorney named Howard Qley, called me Friday morning. He asked detailed questions about my involvement and my statement to police. Then he gave me advice that made my stomach hurt. Claire, you need to be very careful here. You admitted to providing a false alibi. That's obstruction of justice, a felony. The DA could charge you as an accomplice after the fact. Your best hope is that the police believe your cooperation makes prosecution not worth pursuing. But if Vanessa Kemp is found and implicates you further, or if your story changes, you could be in serious trouble. I asked what I should do. Tell the absolute truth from now on. Answer their questions fully, show remorse, and pray that Kemp is caught quickly and takes full responsibility. Over the weekend, I learned more about Margaret Thornton through news coverage. She'd been a retired teacher who volunteered at a literacy program. She had 3 children and 7 grandchildren. Her husband of 40 years was devastated. Her daughter gave a tearful interview calling for the driver to turn herself in. The family had hired Vanessa's law firm to help with estate planning because Margaret's health had been declining. Vanessa had worked directly with the family for months. The motive emerged from police investigation. Margaret Thornton had changed her will 2 weeks before her death, cutting out her youngest son who had addiction problems. The law firm had processed this change and Vanessa had prepared the documents, but the police discovered text messages between Vanessa and Margaret's son, Trevor Thornton. They'd been having an affair for 3 months. Trevor had promised Vanessa money if she helped him contest the will, but Margaret's attorney had made the new will ironclad. Trevor stood to lose his entire inheritance, which was substantial. Police believed Trevor had convinced or pressured Vanessa to kill his mother so he'd inherit under the old will. The news broke Monday morning. Police seek second suspect in hit-and-run murder. Trevor Thornton's photo appeared alongside Vanessa's. They showed text messages between them discussing the will change and Trevor's rage at being cut off. They showed bank records of payments Trevor had made to Vanessa over recent weeks. The picture became clear. This was a murder-for-hire conspiracy. Vanessa had killed Margaret Thornton at Trevor's request in exchange for money and the promise of a relationship. Detective Ortiz called me that afternoon. "Miss Holloway, we've located Vanessa Kemp. She was arrested this morning at a motel in Nevada attempting to cross into California. We also arrested Trevor Thornton at his apartment. Both are being charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy." I felt relief and horror mixing together. "What happens now?" Detective Ortiz explained. "Both suspects are being extradited back here. The DA is building the case. You'll likely be called to testify about Vanessa's behavior before and after the murder, and about the false alibi she requested. Your cooperation has been noted, and the DA has decided not to pursue obstruction charges against you given the circumstances. But you need to remain available for trial." After hanging up, I sat in the quiet apartment trying to process everything. Vanessa had murdered someone for money and love. She'd manipulated me into providing cover. She'd left me holding guilt and cash and lies. The friendship I'd thought we had was completely false. She'd used me because I was convenient and trusting. The trial began 4 months later. I was called as a witness for the prosecution. Walking into the courtroom and seeing Vanessa sitting at the defense table felt surreal. She'd lost weight and looked older. Her expensive work clothes had been replaced by a gray suit that hung loosely on her frame. She didn't look at me when I took the witness stand. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Rita Blackwood, walked me through my testimony. I described Vanessa asking for the alibi, my agreement to lie, the phone call with Detective Ortiz where I'd provided false information, coming home to find her gone with $2,000 left behind. Vanessa's defense attorney tried to suggest I'd misunderstood her request or that I was lying to save myself. But my story matched physical evidence and witness statements. The prosecutor introduced my clinical rotation records proving I'd been at the hospital all day and couldn't have witnessed Vanessa's actual location. Margaret Thornton's family sat in the front row. Her husband held a photo of her throughout the trial. Her daughter sobbed quietly during witness testimony. I made myself look at them while testifying because they deserved to see me acknowledge my role in trying to protect their mother's killer. After my testimony, I stayed to watch the rest of the trial. The evidence against Vanessa and Trevor was overwhelming. Traffic cameras showed Vanessa's car at the scene. Forensic analysis found Margaret's blood and hair on the vehicle. Text messages between the conspirators discussed timing and method. Trevor had provided detailed information about his mother's schedule. Vanessa had scouted the location beforehand. They'd planned the murder meticulously. Both defendants tried to blame each other. Vanessa claimed Trevor had threatened her and forced her to participate. Trevor claimed Vanessa had acted alone out of obsession with him. The jury didn't believe either version. The verdict came back after 6 hours of deliberation. Guilty on all counts for both defendants. First-degree murder. Conspiracy to commit murder. The courtroom erupted in emotion. Margaret's family hugged each other and cried. Trevor's father buried his face in his hands. Vanessa showed no reaction, just stared at the table in front of her. Sentencing occurred 2 weeks later. The judge was a stern woman in her 60s who'd presided over the trial with careful attention. She addressed both defendants before announcing sentences. To Trevor, "You orchestrated your own mother's death for money. You manipulated someone vulnerable into committing murder on your behalf. You showed no remorse throughout this trial. You are a danger to society and deserve the maximum punishment allowed by law." To Vanessa, "You had choices. You could have reported Trevor Thornton's plans to authorities. You could have walked away from the relationship. Instead, you chose to deliberately kill an innocent woman. You accelerated your vehicle toward Margaret Thornton and struck her with lethal force. You left her dying in the street. You tried to establish a false alibi through your roommate. You fled when you realized you'd be caught. Your actions demonstrate complete disregard for human life." The judge sentenced Trevor to life in prison without possibility of parole. She sentenced Vanessa to 35 years with possibility of parole after 25. Margaret's husband gave a victim impact statement that broke everyone in the courtroom. "My wife was the kindest person I've ever known. She taught children to read for 40 years. She volunteered every week at the homeless shelter. She loved her grandchildren more than anything in the world. On the day she died, she was walking to pick up our granddaughter from school because she wanted to surprise her. She never got to say goodbye to any of us. These two people took her from our lives for money. Money she'd earned through decades of hard work. Money she'd planned to use to help her other children and grandchildren. They stole her future and our future with her. I hope they spend every day in prison thinking about what they've done." I cried listening to his statement. After sentencing, I stood in the courthouse hallway feeling empty and wrung out. Detective Ramos approached me. "Miss Holloway, I wanted to tell you that your testimony was crucial. You made a mistake by initially lying, but you corrected it quickly and cooperated fully. That matters." I asked something I'd been wondering. Would they have been caught if I hadn't eventually told the truth? She considered this. "Probably. The physical evidence was strong, but your testimony about Vanessa's behavior before and after the murder helped establish premeditation and consciousness of guilt. You did the right thing in the end." That didn't make me feel much better. I'd still lied initially, still provided cover for a murderer, still accepted hush money. The guilt lived with me constantly. I finished nursing school but struggled through my final semester. Every time I studied or worked with patients, I thought about Margaret Thornton and how she'd never get to watch her grandchildren grow up, how her family would have an empty chair at every holiday, how her husband would sleep alone after 40 years of marriage, all because two selfish people decided her life was worth less than money and forbidden love. After graduating, I moved to a different city, stayed in a new apartment alone. I couldn't bring myself to have a roommate again. The trust was broken too completely. I started working as a nurse at a children's hospital and threw myself into the work. Helping sick kids gave me purpose and slowly eased the guilt. Gave me a way to do something good after being part of something terrible. I still think about Vanessa sometimes. Wonder if she regrets her choices. Wonder if she thinks about Margaret Thornton dying in the street. Wonder if she realizes how she destroyed multiple lives, including her own. But mostly I think about the moment she asked me for that alibi, and I said yes without questions. That moment when loyalty to a friend overrode judgment and moral sense. That moment when I became complicit in murder because I didn't want to seem unsupportive. I learned that friendship doesn't mean blind loyalty. That real friends don't ask you to lie to police. That sometimes the kindest thing you can do is refuse to help someone destroy themselves and others. That truth matters more than convenience. I visit Margaret Thornton's grave once a year on the anniversary of her death. Leave flowers and tell her I'm sorry. Sorry I tried to protect her killer. Sorry I didn't ask the right questions. Sorry I didn't call Detective Ortiz back immediately and tell the truth. Her gravestone lists her as a beloved wife, mother, grandmother, and teacher. It doesn't mention how she died or who killed her, just celebrates the life she lived before it was stolen. That gravestone reminds me that every action has consequences, that the choices we make ripple outward, touching lives we never see, that we're all responsible not just for what we do, but for what we enable others to do through our silence and our lies. 3 years after the trial, I was working a shift at the hospital when I got a call from an unknown number. It was Trevor Thornton's father. He'd somehow gotten my contact information and wanted to talk. We met for coffee near the hospital. He looked much older than his courtroom photos, gray-haired and worn down by tragedy. He told me he'd spent years trying to understand how his son became capable of murder, trying to figure out where he and his wife had failed as parents. "I don't blame you for what happened," he said. "You were deceived by someone you trusted. You made a mistake, but you corrected it. My son made deliberate evil choices and manipulated others into helping him. Those are different things." He told me that Trevor showed no remorse in prison, still blamed everyone else for his situation, still insisted he was a victim. "Some people are just broken," Trevor's father said. "I've had to accept that. My son is one of them. But you're not. You're trying to make amends and do good work. That matters." After he left, I sat in the coffee shop crying for an hour. The validation from someone who'd lost so much because of related events helped ease guilt I'd carried for years. Didn't erase it, but made it more bearable. Last year, Vanessa sent me a letter from prison. I almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity won. She'd written pages apologizing, explaining, justifying. She claimed Trevor had manipulated her, that she'd been in love and blind to his true nature, that she'd panicked after the hit and run and made terrible choices, that she thought about Margaret Thornton every day and wished she could undo everything. The letter felt hollow, self-serving, focused more on Vanessa's suffering than her victim's death. I didn't respond. Instead, I wrote to Margaret's husband, told him about my work at the children's hospital, about the kids I helped every day, about how his wife's death had taught me the value of life and truth, about how I'd never forget what happened or stop trying to do better. He wrote back, said my letter meant more than I knew, said Margaret would be glad something positive had come from tragedy, said forgiveness was complicated but possible for those who truly tried to change. Today I'm 28 years old and still working as a pediatric nurse, still living alone, still visiting Margaret's grave annually, still carrying the weight of that Wednesday morning when detectives arrived with a warrant and I had to admit I'd lied to protect a murderer. The experience changed me fundamentally, made me more cautious about trust, more insistent on truth, more aware of how quickly life can be stolen and how devastating the ripples of violence spread. Vanessa will be eligible for parole in 22 more years. Trevor will die in prison. Margaret Thornton will remain dead. Her grandchildren will grow up without her. Her husband will grow old alone, all because two people valued money more than life, and because I said yes when someone asked me to lie without explaining why. That yes will follow me forever, but so will everything I've learned from it, everything I've done to make amends, every patient I've helped, every truth I've insisted on telling no matter how difficult. Margaret Thornton deserved better than the death she got, and she deserved better than a scared nursing student who lied to protect her killer. I can't change the past, but I can honor her memory by living differently, choosing better, demanding truth, and never again putting loyalty above justice. That's not redemption exactly, but it's something. A way forward built on hard lessons and constant remembering. The detectives who arrived that Wednesday morning gave me a choice: continue lying or tell the truth. I chose truth, eventually. And that choice, though late and imperfect, saved me from becoming something worse than I already was. If you enjoyed this, you'll definitely want to see the next ones too. So subscribe now and let me know your take in the comments.